Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. It's Q&A. You can ask questions any time of the day. Now, if you're in Makana, of course, you can ask the questions inside of Makana. You can vote on those questions. You can chat with each other about the questions. If you're not in Makana, you can use askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, and you can do that 24/7. So any time of the day, you can ask those questions, askofficehours.global. And let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
Andy Kokendorfer starts us off today from Vieira, Florida, with how does the zoom setting optimized for video editing change the recording file parameters?
I actually haven't dug into that very deeply, but usually what that means is it's going to save a different set of keyframes. So basically, what a lot of these systems do is to record when you're recording, you're trying to record in the longest GOP that you can, group of frames. And those frames are, you have keyframes, and then you have P frames and B frames that are predictive and bidirectional. And because not very much is moving in a Zoom meeting, if you don't have something moving behind you, you can get very, very, very long keyframes. so the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of frames, because there's just not that much changing as it goes through it. But that makes it hard to edit because you need to cut to it's hard to edit those things. It's hard to find them. It's hard to skip through them, because if you rewind back and you don't have any keyframes, remember it was based on the last frame that came through, and so you end up with only partial frames. And so while I haven't used Zoom setting there, because usually if I'm recording something that I need to edit from Zoom, I'm recording it from Zoom ISO or something else that I'm recording to a drive. I'm not using any, because it's not just that. The quality will be lower if you record with Zoom as opposed to an external recorder from Zoom ISO. It's not recording the same 6 megs a second 1080p it's still compressing. Even if you do optimize for video settings, it's still going to compress it more than if you just take the raw output out of an SDI or an NDI or other things like that. So if I'm going to edit something and I care about it, I'm going to record it with some kind of external recorder. But this would allow you to, what I'm guessing is that it's adding more keyframes there. Go ahead, Bill.
I suspect Alex is exactly right on this. I mean, for editor, mission critical is to be able to cut on the frame boundary exactly and not have any frame that is captured as an algorithm as opposed to the actual data for each frame. And if you don't do that, if you use some compressed format that has these iframes and predictive frames, the software is going to have to create whole frames before you go into editing. So it adds another stage that you have to go in. In Final Cut, it's optimize footage, but in all the editing packages, there will be some way to take those predictive frames and things like that and turn them into real frames before the cutting stage, whether it's on the fly or whether you have to do it as a post-process.
Next question.
Next one comes from Robert Soji in Los Angeles. Can you talk about the new Sony Burano camera?
I don't think it's that new. I mean, I think it's been out now for at least a year. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I've been on a couple productions so far that use the Burano. Coming from a point of view of someone who only deals with it for like 5 minutes at the start of the shooting day, and then at the end when I pull out my timecode boxes and my receivers, it feels like it's form factor wise, it's very much an ENG camera. Like you don't have the AC, assistant camera operator controls on the right hand side of the camera, which is available on the Venice or other cinema cameras.
Yeah, can you explain that? That's a really important tip between some of the bigger cameras and the smaller cameras, is where the controls are, because they're on the smaller cameras, they're often on the left side, and on the bigger cameras, they're on the right side. Why is that?
So yeah, on a film set, a cinema set, or even like a documentary where you have a much larger camera system in use, you would have each camera has its own crew, a crew of 2, 3, 4 people. You have your operator, first AC, second AC, sometimes a camera intern.
And can you define a little bit about what each one of those does?
So you have your camera operator, the person actually framing while you're rolling. And in a larger set, that is literally the only thing they do. They don't hit roll. They don't change camera settings. They don't put it on the tripod. Focus. They don't put it on the tripod. They have their assistant camera operators for that. So you have your first AC, the first assistant camera operator that does your focus pulling and manages the camera department and make sure it's running smoothly. You have your second AC, which is traditionally the clapper loader, the person handling in the past the film magazines. So loads those magazines up with film rolls, manages all the negatives to be sent out to the lab. That person is also in charge of slating and logging all the takes. So that's the second AC. Both the first AC and the second AC manage the building of the camera rig, and then you have your DIT, which on film sets that is shooting on digital, which is pretty much majority of the film sets these days. The DIT manages the actual image settings, or at times all settings within the camera. So going back to the where the controls are on larger cameras, all camera settings are accessible on a separate panel, typically that is on the right-hand side of the camera, away from the actual operator who's framing. So the assistant camera operators and also the DIT can access all the menus and all the settings through that separate control panel, on the right-hand side. So on the Burano, you don't have that. So it's not a full-size cinema camera, but
it's kind of halfway between, right? Because you have the FX line, which is the 3, the 6, the...
It's kind of confusing, like at what point do you jump from the FX9 to the Burano? I guess it's a budgetary thing, but I would imagine, I don't know what the rental rates are, but I would imagine it wouldn't be that huge a leap in terms of pricing.
Yeah, because it's kind of complicated. So the FX lines live in the kind of the sub $10,000 range. The Burano is about $25,000, I think, for the body, and then of course after that you're talking about Venice and Venice 2, which are much more expensive bodies. The interesting thing is that the day rates on a lot of these are much closer together. So it really depends on the kind of production that you're doing. For the most part, especially when you're talking about a 3-day week, which is in the United States pretty common, on a 3-day week on those, the delta compared to all the other costs is why a lot of people end up using Venices or Aries or other things like that, because the cost just isn't that much different. Like when you take the actual cost of those cameras, it just doesn't stretch out to me worth, you'll save $1,000 a week, but you're only shooting for, 4 weeks and you've got millions of dollars of shooting budget, the delta of, because as Mickey can attest to, the array of gear that you put around the camera is still going to be there. So you're really talking about the rental of the body. It feels like the Burano for me is, again, I haven't shot with it. Ricky's had some interaction with it. I haven't had any interaction with it. I've had the stuff that I've done has been mostly FX6s or Venices and Aries. The FX6s and the FR7s have filled that space for me in the less costly but still full frame, and I'm not doing big film work with them. These are things that want to look filmish, but not be film. And then immediately we just jump to the larger cameras. And so the Burano has been this thing that kind of goes by as we go through it. But I think that I do think it's a pretty interesting form factor for large corporate, small film, and especially for people who want to be owner operators. I think the Burano makes sense. You've got an 8K sensor. It's a really nice camera, but I think it's for people who want to own something that's a little bit better than everyone else in the FX line, but doesn't necessarily can't justify the Venices as something that they're going to keep in the garage. Go ahead, Courtney.
This is a market segment they're going after that they weren't in before, which is the red segment. That level of camera. It's not going to compete with the Alexas or the Venices, but it's an entry-level cinema camera for $28,000. And Mickey, it does have controls on the right side. That little LCD control panel flips over to the right side, so that you camera assistant can use it from over there to do all their settings. So it is, versatile in that respect. And these days, I'll tell you, the cameras, I never see a first AC next to the camera anymore. The second AC puts it on the tripod and turns it on and rigs all the transmitters. And then the first AC is sitting in front of a 15-inch monitor off the set somewhere with a remote Preston focus iris and zoom control. So they're controlling the lens and everything from a separate monitor, which is bigger, where they can see focus better, because they usually use peaking and want a good high-quality monitor to pull focus off of these days. So they're not standing necessarily next to the camera unless they're having to do manual focus pulls, in which case they will stand next to the camera.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, that the LCD that the Courtney showed there is the actual primary LCD screen, which in single operator mode is what the operator uses. So it's just flipping around the position of that existing single LCD screen. There's no dedicated controls that are actually on the body itself.
But they would use that position if they're using a viewfinder with the viewfinder electronic viewfinders plugged.
Yeah, with an EVF. Although they do have the eyepiece that clicks on onto that LCD, similar to the FX line of cameras. So that's how they're, I guess, making it a dual purpose screen. Going back to what Alex mentioned earlier, in a camera department, the camera rental is a minuscule part of that. The highest cost by a long shot are the actual people, the operators, the camera ops, and also the first and second ACs. And with in terms of camera body size, the Burano is a lot more similar in body size to the Alexa Mini, while the Venice is more like the similar to the body size of the Alexa 35. So that's sort of if you're familiar with the Alexa line, that's your comparison in terms of body sizes.
It's going to be really interesting. It's never been a better time to be looking at cameras, except for the next best time will be in the next 6 months when new cameras come out again. It'll be really, we're really interested in also seeing, what happens with the Blackmagic 65 mil that is due out this fall. They showed it. I actually got to take a look at it at NAB, and I don't, again, different color signs and everything else from the Sonys and the Aries, but still pretty amazing looking sensor when it comes out. So I think that the costs, and we expect most of those, that to be in the 25,000 range. So I think that the costs and the quality of these cameras is just going to keep on getting better and better. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. And Paul says, I need hooks to run Ethernet cables along ceilings and in crawl spaces. Any suggestions? And he notes he prefers Amazon, Home Depot, Walmart, Best Buy, or Lowe's as the source.
Go ahead, Marty.
So the easiest thing to use is something called a J-hook. And these are easy to find at any of these retailers. The one problem, couple of caveats, though. If you're running long distances, you will get a lot of sag between the hooks, in which case you can use something like a J channel, which runs linearly and will support all the wires. But if aesthetics and future accessibility is important too. So this has an open top, which allows you to access the wire, add more later. But if you don't need them to be accessible and you really want better aesthetics, then use a wire mold style channel that you can find pretty much anywhere.
Go ahead, Courtney.
And if you're going along, baseboards are something that can be stapled to. That there are special staplers that you can get at Lowe's. Like this Gardner Bender Cable Boss. It's designed for specific staples like this that have this little bridge in here that protects the cable, and it doesn't let the staple crimp into the cable. And so there are special staplers that are designed to hold those type of staples. So cable stapler would be a good choice to have, along with the clips that Marty was talking about.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, the thing with staples is that we can only it only supports a single cable at a time, and staples in general I try to avoid because there's a lot of things that could go wrong when mounting cables with staples. I'd go with what Marty mentioned, J hooks. There are J hooks that you can find in hardware stores, though those don't have what's called edge guard. So because typical J hooks are just bended metal and that have a sharp edge on it. So if you are, say, resting, 4 to 8 cables on a single J hook, all that weight could start to have the cables dig into the metal, and you can damage your cabling that way. There are J hooks that are manufactured specifically for low voltage cabling or network cabling or Ethernet cabling. There are companies like Panduit that specialize in this, and they have J hooks that have rounded edges. They're made out of a softer material like plastic, and they have rounded edges as to not to avoid damage on the cabling. Other companies that do this are Platinum Tools, and they have J hooks there that have a plastic curved plastic cowling on the actual metal hook, so that again you're protecting the cabling, and you can rest a lot of weight in them without fear of damaging the wires.
Good, Bill.
You didn't know if this was permanent or temporary. I'll just give you one caveat. If you're working in a space where you have a drop ceiling and you're going to temporarily hang cables, a lot of people use scissor clips and things like that go on the aluminum members between the panels. I learned very early in my career to always pop one of the panels up, put your head up there, and see if they put the wire hangers for the drop ceiling at a good spacing thing. A good installation will have quite a few of the wires that actually suspend the drop ceiling up. If you don't get into that, even a lightweight cable or a bundle of cables can cause sag, and in some cases actually tear it down if you put a weight fixture on there. So watch your drop ceiling installations and be careful with them.
Two 4x4s, Kinos, and 4 Divas. That's the max I put onto a drop ceiling.
You live dangerously.
You know, I was somewhere where I looked up. I was somewhere where they had these curtains that you could pull around, and I looked up and I saw this, which is a curved track that you can put curtains on that you can attach to a drop ceiling. And like all the times that I've had to try to pull up, put sound blankets and everything else, I was just like, the sunlight came in from the heavens. I was like, look at that, so I have to, I was like, we could just go into someone's office and install that, and then we'd have, baffling. Next question.
Next question comes from Douglas Carmichael. Has anyone used a workbench as a studio desk? I saw this article about Husky, the brand workbenches that are popular for work from home, and he's got the link there.
Go ahead, Marty. Can't hear you, Marty.
So this is a standing desk, and these are available in a wide variety of sizes and shapes, and some are motorized for height and some aren't. And this is good if, this particular one has wheels, so it can move around, and you can adjust the height of the workbench, so whether you're standing or sitting. But it's one flat surface, and that's part of the issue when you're doing video production. Sometimes it really helps to have more than one surface to put things on. So typical production work desk would have 2 or more surfaces with a cavity underneath, so you can tuck some things inside and away. These are very helpful devices to work with.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, those inexpensive desks can be very strong, and it could be a great starter desk. I will say, as you move up to more production-oriented equipment, you will find things like cable troughs and things that really do help you keep not just well-wired, but keep things looking decent. As you saw in the picture, even in the promotional picture there, they had just general wires hanging down the back. That may or may not be a problem for you. If you're doing production out of your own home bedroom and nobody else is coming in, go for it. If you're trying to look a little more professional, pay attention to things like split looms or things like that you can run wires down and then find a way to attach that to the back so that at least it doesn't look too messy. You'll be embarrassed if somebody comes over and all your wires are just hanging.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So to me, a table is a table. This is a nice table, and I can always take a drill to it to add anything for cable management or for putting a PC in there or anything like that. You could also look at some of these. Some of them will come without the tabletop, and what's really cool about that is then you can make your own tabletop. I worked with Ergotron for a couple of years. I have the WorkFit desk in front of me, and it's a nice desk, but you can get it without the tabletop. And what we did was we created our own tabletop for CES when we were doing live streams. That way we could fit around the table a little bit better than having a square table. So with that'll kind of contour to whatever area that you're at. Just watch out for the weight amount. This one has a dial to turn it up and down instead of electronics to bring it up and down. But of course, if you put too much weight on the table, the whole thing's just going to come crashing down.
Next question.
Kai Cochran in Seattle, Washington. Throwing a Cochran, what was learned in the NDI Bridge meetup?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, we learned a lot. So we were doing, I set up a host in AWS that we were NDI Bridge host, and then we had 8 cameras coming from my facility here in Texas going up to AWS. So we had 8 4K cameras going up at 1080p 60. And then those were what I really wanted to test was not only what was capable bandwidth-wise, but we also wanted to test sync across 8 signals. And so we set them up shooting at basically a timer, a sync live web page that actually just rolls sync every time, every second, and then we could see the 100ths in the milliseconds and everything like that. So that way we could see and take a snapshot like all these cameras are in sync, all these cameras, this one's out of sync. We had one rogue every once in a while, but it wasn't the end of the world. He would fall back in line every once in a while, and it could very well even be the physical camera itself. But we were really successful in finding out that multiple 8 channels of 1080p backhaul can absolutely work. And then the cool part was we hit the bridge up there with just my 8 cameras. Then we had actually at the high point, I think 16 different people connected to that bridge pulling those cameras back down. I can't wait to see my AWS bill. I'm really excited about that.
Go, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I loved it. It was a great event. Thanks, Jeff, for putting that on there. The one thing that I actually learned came from before this meeting, because we talked about it the week before, and then we were planning for this meeting. So I just sat there and I found all the computers that I had in my house here, and I just started putting Bridge on it to see what Bridge could do, because you don't need that powerful of a computer, but you do need something with a good GPU in the back end to use that. So I was playing with different types of bridges on different computers, which ones could use HEVC, which ones would go to 10-bit, and I have a good understanding of what type of infrastructure I need to have in my production to really get that utilize that NDI 6 ability.
Next question.
Next one comes from Andy Kokendorfer, in Vieira, Florida. And Andy wonders, with the proliferation of media, corporate clients can take quality production for granted. How do you show the value of your production services?
I don't think they can. I think that there's a lot of people out there. I think there's a lot of production that's out there. I don't know if corporate clients can actually take good quality, high quality production for granted. So there's a couple things that for corporate clients I think becomes important. Obviously, reliability is a big important piece of production, of just knowing that they're going to get what they paid for. They're not expecting you to build the next feature film, but they do expect you to have something that is of clean quality that you're going to deliver so that they look good. Like you are protecting their 401k if you're working for them. And so, they have to, if they bid something out, they need to have it actually happen. But there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of hecticness that can happen in a lot of productions, and where you really set yourself apart is start to have that feel, whether it's calm for you or not, it needs to feel calm for the client. So clients feeling like their job is at risk, which is every time your project isn't working. It doesn't matter what happened at the end. It doesn't matter what you delivered to them. It's how it felt and whether they felt like this was going to go well all the way through. And so there's a couple things you have to be kind of careful about. But one of them is just that there's all these little things like, when you're in a corporate meeting, you show up on time. And even if you're the only one there and they show up 5 minutes late every single time, you want to be the one that they're waiting. You don't want to be the one they're waiting for. You want to have a calm demeanor. It's just really, there's something about being calm in a meeting. You don't need to tell them everything that's possible that they could do. It's just a matter of having a calm conversation with them about what they need and trying to suss out. They don't know what they need. They don't know what they want, and they don't know how to do it. That's why they're hiring you. So what you have to do is take the vision. You're turning their dreams into logistics. And so they've got an idea of something they want to do, and your job is to tighten that up and give it back to them. And they didn't come from film. They didn't come from TV. They don't have, they didn't go to film school. They just want this thing to be communicated. And so what you don't want to do is ask them what they want to do. You want to ask them what they want to, what do they want it to look like? How do they want people to feel about it? You want to talk about the things that they know really well because they know their products well. And then you start to figure out what that looks like. Again, reliability, calmness. If overpromise and underdeliver, they will never trust you again. We don't tell, I push back on people who work for me who say, if someone says, how are things going? You don't say great. You say, everything's going good right now. Everything's nominal. Everything is, you're not telling because if something went wrong, you telling them it was great the whole time does not make it. It just means that they know they can't listen to you anymore. They want you to be slightly stressed all the time because your stress takes their stress away. So you being a little bit stressed and paying attention to lots of little details and being worried about things. I always love, in Princess Bride, one of my favorite quotes is when they said the guy with the six fingers, he says, "This could be a trap," and the king says, "You think everything's a trap, and that's why I'm still alive." So you want to keep on. Your job is to be that ground force for them to get that done and do whatever it needs to do, so that they don't feel like it's difficult or hard. And so you shield them from all of those things. The other thing is that you don't change your quote numbers. In LA, primarily, it's very common for people to bid low and then go high. They bid low and then they start adding things onto it, and producers expect that, and they expect to have all of that. That's kind of an expectation. In corporate, you tell people a number and then they go get approval for it, and that's the number. Like if you come back and the number is higher, then they, there's a lot of meetings they have to have, and they don't want to hire you again. So you have to. It's all about producing, again, good, clean media, good audio, good lighting, good video. That's something everybody can do. It's all the creature comforts around it that make the folks that really succeed at corporate work succeed. Is that feeling? Mickey, did you have anything to add to that? And I saw you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, we pretty much covered what I was going to say. Like, first off, as you mentioned, be reliable, deliver what you say you can deliver. That's number one. I mean, that's the basics of a business relationship or exchange. And again, like as he mentioned earlier, Alex, take the headache away from. This is coming from someone who's often a subcontractor to production companies that serve the end client. Take the headache away from the entities above you. I'm reiterating what you mentioned. Like, they're hiring you to take care of something, so take care of it for them. Don't make it their headache. If there are some things that have to be, wherein the decisions have to be made by them, then approach them. But aside from that, be the person as much as possible making those decisions, so they don't have to think about it. Have your ear to the ground, listen and anticipate what's needed next. Again, you don't want them to have to come up in front of your clients. Be the person that takes care of it even before it's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Robert Soji in Los Angeles is up next with, could you please recommend ready-made XLR microphone cables? Thanks.
Good, Mickey.
So yeah, I don't have a specific brand of pre-made cables that I recommend, but as long as it's a quad microphone cable or quad cable.
Do you mean Star Quad?
My go-to is typically Canary Star Quad. Mm-hmm. But there are multiple brands that make quad cables. Mogami also has quad cables. So does Belden. But as long as it's a quad cable from a reputable brand, and also it uses the pre-made cable uses Neutrik connectors. They're industry standard for a reason. I think my oldest XLR cable is probably, it's multiple decades old. Neutrik lasts. So as long as it's a good cable, with Neutrik connectors, you should be good. And reputable pre-made cables typically state what cable they use for the pre-made cable and also what brand of connectors they use.
Right. I just came across some Mogami cables that I bought 15 years ago. They still work just fine. But I was like, oh, I remember this day. I remember the day that I spent so much money because I needed them really quickly and I needed to know they were going to work. Go ahead, Mickey, or Marty.
Yeah, I have cables that are 20, 25 years old. If you care for them well, they will serve you well. But it's more about the components, the connectors, and the particular kind of wire than the brand, because each brand has different ranges, different price points for wire. But I'll throw out a couple of names that of companies that I've used and bought from. Elite Core Audio, Coluber cable, which is Coluber, Have Inc., Canary, of course, Gotham Audio, Mogami, Sommer cable, Sommer, and Nemo. They're all very reputable manufacturers and fabricators for cable. And if you go to any of the established video production shops or audio production shops, they will help you, guide you to a cable that's appropriate for your application. Because, if you're going to lay this in a studio and move it rarely around, that's a very different application than if you're taking it out on location every single day, running it through dirt and grass and mud and concrete and stuff, or on stage where people are going to be trampling on it. Different gauges of cable, different types of insulation. You need to accommodate your application.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, for pre-made microphone cables, probably the easiest choice would be, especially in LA or in most major cities, Guitar Center carries a line of these Mogami XLR cables from 3 feet to 50 feet, from $30 to $80, and they do come with a lifetime guarantee. So if any, and they're all Mogami cable with Neutrik connectors that they were talking about. If you're looking for custom-made cables, or if you want the Canary Location Sound Corp, which I know is not far from you in Los Angeles, so they can custom make cables. They have pre-made cables in all varieties of flavors made by PSC.
I think that the audio department or Location Sound can build the cables for the same price as the Mogami cables. Like if you for exactly what you need. I mean,
they can.
Yeah.
Especially if you want custom links. But I'm just saying, easy if you need off the shelf.
If you need off the shelf and you're just not,
Guitar Center is a quick place to go and get them.
We cleared it out.
Lifetime guarantee. I don't think Location Sound will lifetime guarantee their cables.
Yeah, we cleared out. When there was one time we were missing a whole bunch of cables and I couldn't explain what to get and how to get it. So I just sent my wife to this was when we were really small and getting started. I said, just go to Guitar Center and get the nicest cables they have. These are the lengths that I need. And she just came back with $2,000 of Mogami cables. And I was like, I know I married you for a reason. So anyway, go ahead, Mickey.
I was just
she was the CFO too, so it was the money. So it was yeah. So
I just wanted to add at Guitar Center, you'll see Hosa cables. I'd stay away from those unless you need the specific arrangements. They are really lower quality.
They're okay for 3 feet. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, and just adding to what Courtney mentioned, Hosa makes decent, in my opinion, one-time use cable. So if I were to go, if I needed, like, say, an RCA to a 1/4 inch or something to plug an iPod in, like, really quick, then I'd go Hosa. But I would treat them as single use, single show cables. Just to add to the brand list that everyone mentioned, the Proco brand from the house brand of Sweetwater also makes decent cables. They do have a variety of cables. Go with, again, the quad cables. And also, just one thing I want to mention is soldering is a very, very useful skill to have. And XLR cables are very good connectors to practice on. They're very easy to terminate. So, get yourself, start with maybe a $20 soldering iron kit, and get some cable. You can make cables assemble cables that end up being significantly cheaper than buying them pre-made. So having that skill set and buy a 100-meter, 300-foot roll of balanced microphone cable and a bunch of connectors and practice on them and learn the skill. That's something I'd recommend.
Absolutely. Wait for it. There'll be an after hours at some point that we do that. We keep on promising to do it. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Ryan Gordon in New York, New York. Hi, Office Hours team. Any recommendations on a piece of software to receive an SRT video stream and output it to SDI? Preferably Mac-based and works with Blackmagic Decklink or Ultra Studios line.
Go, Jeff.
My friends at Sienna have a product that does that, and it's a software add-on. The Sienna processing engine will easily be able to take those SRTs in and send them back out via SDI. Maybe a little overkill for what you're doing just for a single source, but there is a product there that does it. There's also, maybe Guy can help me pronounce it, Garaniman, I don't know.
Garanin.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, Garanin SRT mini server is what I would recommend. It is on the PC side, but it is direct. So it's write SRT in, and then you can do AJA, Blackmagic, Bluefish, any of those guys. The beautiful thing about it is there's a couple things. Well, you could do 16 inputs. You can also do what's called proxy. So if you have an IP that you don't want to expose, or if you have hops that you need to do, you can tunnel through firewalls with SRT mini server. And there is a monthly price, or you can buy it outright, but I love SRT mini server, and it also do NDI, and you can also do caller or listener modes. But it's a fantastic piece of software. That's the route I would go. If you had to do it on the Mac, Wirecast now with the version 16, you can go month to month, and that will do in, and you can kick back out SDI on a hardware piece of equipment by using the output.
Does Larynx can it address the hardware directly? It can't, yeah. Also remember, if you only need one output, you don't need a computer. Like Magewell and others make NDI to SDI outputs, so you can just spit it out, and you have a little box that just knocks out that pushes it out to SDI. I've got one sitting over there. So if you're just trying to get to baseband from it, and if you don't have a lot of them, they are expensive. I mean, they're not $10, but that's another option as well. Next question.
Matthew LeCount in Oakland, California. When traveling to an unfamiliar city, how would you find lighting or sound contractors for a smaller venue? Think conference hall.
I'll go ahead, Marty.
So there used to be a number of industry directories around. There are still a couple, Production Hub, AVIQ, and the source books from Oz Online. These are directories where companies can pay to be listed, so there's that limiting factor. I would reach out to people I reach out on our Discord channel, asking for recommendations. We have people all over the world who can recommend local resources.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, certainly what Marty said. Reach out to your networks. See who the people you trust. I think that's at least what's worked best for me in terms of finding people to work with.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
First thing I'd do is I would contact the conference hall and see if A, they're a union shop, and B, if they have all the equipment that you need, and if you have to rent it out, if you have to hire a person for what they recommend for people that they've used in the past. So, but of course, if it's a union hall, then you need to get a union person to do whatever job you need to do.
Go, Jeff. Can't hear you. Nope, can't hear you, Jeff. And while Jeff's figuring that out, oftentimes I ask the vendors that I'm already hiring. So if I know that I have a camera operator, I'll ask the camera operators, who do you normally work with? Oftentimes I find a lead camera operator and I have them fill all the other camera positions, because that's going to give me a team that knows each other. that is good at what they do, and the camera operator who recommended them feels responsible. Generally, if I hired them,
Exactly.
they feel responsible. So I've had them act as the police for their own camera crew because they're the ones that recommended them, and their name is on the line. So I find that to be a really effective way. And same thing, that they're going to be wanting everybody to work well and be effective and everything else. So asking folks there, if you're in Oakland, by the way, if you're looking for a recommendation for the Bay Area, I'll tell you that MV Staging is generally all I use for large scale lighting for events. They're out of South San Francisco, and I've worked with them for 15 years. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, especially in California, find someone that's an employee of record so that they do the crewing for you. If you're in California, working in California, they need to be employees. Let me just put it at that. They just need to be.
Yeah,
if you're trying to skate that, don't.
No, I don't think so. I think just looking for people to do it. But I think that, again, for 15 years, when I've needed to do staging, lighting, audio, I've just had that one company pretty much do, for interviews and other things like that, like in someone's house, it's a different thing. But if you're talking about a conference level, these are the folks that work with Google and Facebook and other things like that. It may not be the least expensive solution, but if you're really looking for something to go away, like you're going to give them a drawing and they're going to make it go away, that's the company in the Bay Area to use. Next question.
Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas is up next. How can Final Cut Camera and iPad Final Cut Pro live switching be incorporated into Blackmagic workflows for live event streaming?
Go ahead, Bill.
I don't think they can quite yet. Now, hang on. This was a yesterday announcement. We're all kind of getting our heads wrapped around this. One thing from my reading I know is that the internal 4-camera switching works on a proxy workflow for live stuff. And then in the background, it downloads the main files that your phone's captured. And when you get over into Final Cut, if you're going to do post-production, you have those originals available. But in the live circumstance, you only have proxies. So if you're trying to somehow do live streaming out of this system, you're going to have to deal with that kind of barrier. Are you going to live stream the proxies? If you want full res, I don't think it's there in the first thing. Remember, this is iteration 1.0. None of us have gotten our hands on it yet, and we don't really know what it's going to look like and how it's going to feel. We just know that this brand new M4 chip allowed them to engineer this, and they have, and so we'll see as it rolls out.
Yeah, I think that it was really interesting to see how much Apple focused on creative, because that's really what pushes these iPads to otherwise you can just use the iPad forever. My kids use the same one for 10 years. So I think that I think that they're kind of pushing hard on that angle. I think for education and small corporate and nonprofit, there's a lot of opportunities here to use everybody's phone, tie it in and make it work. But I don't think once you start using bigger cameras and so on and so forth, this isn't going to be the pipeline you're looking for. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer, Viera, Florida. Thoughts on the new Shure MV7 Plus? How does the denoise setting compare to Noise Assist? Is the popper stopper effective without sounding overly processed?
I think that we need to test it. We haven't tested it yet, so hopefully we'll be able to get our hands on one in the not too distant future. I've tried to stop buying mics every time I see a new one. I've been trying.
Oh, come on!
I tried to follow Paul. I tried to keep pace with Paul, and I was like, no, I can't. I have to stop. I have to walk away. So I haven't bought the MV7 Plus yet, but we definitely want to test it. MV7s are kind of our go-to to send out to guests, and the MV7 fixed almost all the complaints that we had. So I think that about the MV7, which was the USB connection, having some kind of version of noise reduction, all of those things are things that we were very excited about. So I'm excited to play with it. I haven't bought one yet. Next question.
Art Aldrich in New York says, looking for a NAS to serve 4 video editors using Final Cut Pro. Needs to be portable and would prefer hardware RAID. Do you think the 20 terabyte Blackmagic Cloud would be a good option?
Good, Mickey.
Historically, Blackmagic hasn't had the greatest track record in terms of file access over networks, at least since they started selling hyperdecks. In my experience, FTP access via hyperdecks, even back then when they first released hyperdecks, and they advertised the ability to access the files via FTP. It never worked reliably. It's worked a little better in the past year and a half, 2 years with the current generation of hyperdecks. So I've had that bad taste in my mouth in terms of in terms of network file access over the network with Blackmagic design products. I would recommend going with a third-party NAS system that allows you to interoperate a lot better with other applications and workflows. Do the math on how much throughput you need for all your workstations, and also how much capacity you need for your storage system. If it fits within the Synology world, like up to the 8-bay systems, I probably go that route in terms of value for money. Again, as long as the throughput required and the capacity required can be supported by the Synology boxes. Once you go above 8 bays, then I would prefer to build my own NAS system using chassis from, say, companies like InWin or Supermicro. I know Jeff is a fan of 45 drives. They do make good products, but I'd rather build my own because I even with the 45 drive systems that I have deployed, I have wiped it all from scratch and rebuilt the OS on my own. So it's for me, it's just cheaper and easier to just build it.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, I was definitely say the 45 drives option. That's what we use here locally. Doug Ferguson also is using that. One of our other friends here from Office Hours. Ours are 30 drives, so we've got a little over half a petabyte in it. As far as our storage, we're only using half of the drive bays, though, but room to grow. But I would, if you're doing editing, I would not be looking at the Blackmagic Cloud as a solution. I'd be looking at a true NAS. So that could be QNAP. They're mixed degrees of success in those, but the 45 drives is rock solid. The one thing it's not is what I would consider, well, it's your definition of portable. Ours is portable because it's in a truck and we can drive wherever we want. Putting it in a check bag, I wouldn't do that with a bunch of spinners, but also be thinking about that side of it. If you don't need that much space, you could also do it at SSD. And it'd be expensive, but you could build a kit out with SSD in a smaller compact piece, but it's going to be, you get what you pay for at that point.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
If you're looking for a small Final Cut edit team, look at OWC. They bought up the assets to, why am I forgetting the name of the product that Luma
Jellyfish.
Jellyfish, thank you. They bought out the Jellyfish patents, and they're inside OWC now. They make fast storage enclosures, and they have systems based around the Jellyfish that will let you do this pretty simply. And they've been working with Max in that circumstance for a long time.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So what I would always recommend is getting something that's going to be at least more than 4 bays if you can for travel. 2 Ethernet ports. Try to get Ethernet ports that go 2.5 gigabits per second, so you'll have enough bandwidth to go back and forth between 4 editors or 8 editors or 20 editors if you need to. And then make sure that your NAS also has the ability to rebuild up to 2 drives at the same time, because if 2 drives go down, your whole production goes down. Usually they can rebuild 1 drive and not have a problem, but that basically becomes a problem when more than 1 drive goes down. So I use TrueNAS myself, and I build my own as I go. But if you need them for more portability, something like Synology, Ugreen's just come onto the scene, and they've got some pretty good NAS drives. I'm going to be testing them in the next couple months.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think it's good to reiterate what Jeff mentioned about what do you mean by portable. You can certainly build NAS storage arrays that are fully solid state, and that would give you both an advantage in terms of stability, because there are no spinning drives in there. So if you're going to keep it in a truck that's bouncing around the road, it's safer to go solid state as opposed to using spinning drives. And of course, you get the speed advantage as well with that. Another thing to look into if you are building your own NAS is to think of tiered storage systems, wherein you have a certain segment of your storage that's on spinning drives, a little slower, and a certain segment of it that's on solid state drives, which gives you performance on specific pieces of media, or you could even do caching within, say, if you're running TrueNAS or even LimeOS with whatever version of NAS OS you're running. You can do different types of tiered storage systems with those.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next with, when do you typically use touch versus latch automation modes in a digital audio workstation? I've read the manual, but curious what practical situations would merit either mode.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Just looking at both of those modes, if, say, I'm doing my first pass on a mix, I would typically keep it on latch mode so that if I have to go back and, say, rewrite an automation, when I release the fader, it stays where it is. Then if I do, additional passes or revisions, and I, for example, just need to bump up a single line or a single beat on something, then I use touch mode so that when I release the fader, it goes back to where it is. But there are some DAWs, for example, what I primarily use is Pro Tools. I typically always use latch mode so that I can go back and do my automation change. And then Pro Tools has a feature called Auto Match, wherein at whatever point in the automation write process, I can hit Auto Match and it will bring the controls, the parameter, whether it be a fader or a compressor and EQ, back to gradually glide back to what's already written there. So that allows me to do a quick punch on automation and then go back in. So I just keep it in latch mode.
Next question.
Robert Soji in Los Angeles wonders, how long can a mic cable be until you start running into noise and signal integrity problems?
Good, Mickey.
This highly depends on the environment, how much EMI noise and RF noise there's in the environment, and also the quality of the cabling that's being used. I've run cables 300, 500 meters, no problem, in very, very large outdoor venues. But I haven't had to do that in such a long time because nowadays there are digital stage boxes usually deployed in in distant locations, and we wire into the stage box and it goes digital back into the console or wherever it needs to go.
All right, go ahead, Marty.
Everything that Mickey just said, it depends on the environment mostly. What kind of interference are you likely to run into? I've run analog snakes 1,000 feet from stage to truck without a single problem. But then I've also installed wire that 30 feet picked up lots and lots and lots of noise, and had to change from a single pair to a star quad with better shielding, and that absolutely fix the problem. Depends on the kind of interference that you're encountering. If it's strong RF, if you're like near a television transmission tower, if you're in a room where there are SCR lighting dimmers, it's all variable. So it's one of the reasons why you want to carry the best cable you can on a regular basis. Star quad with double shielding is great. Foil shielding is good because that's 100% shielding, but it's also sometimes can be brittle. So you want to be choosing your wires carefully.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yep, like they have said, it depends on the wire, it depends on the type of microphone, depends on the signal level, and depends on the environment. I like to keep microphone levels, especially if you're using 48-volt Phantom back from the original source, less than about 250 feet with good quality Canary or star quad cable, which eliminates a lot of the hum or any kind of inductive noise that you're going to pick up along the way, and it has really good shielding as well. If you can get longer than that, I'd suggest going, like Mickey said, with the stage box, where the phantom power and sometimes the preamps and everything and the interface are contained in the stage box itself. So you're only running 25-foot cables or so to all the microphones, and then the stage box carries either the Dante or some type of digital encoded signal MADI back to your console, or gets it up to maybe even line level so that you have mic preamps in a stage box. Then it goes line level back to your mixing panel in some sort. So that would be a better way to go. Remember, voltage drops over the resistance of the cable. So the longer the cable, the lower the signal at the other end, and the same thing with the lower the voltage on the phantom power if you're powering it back from your console.
Next question.
Michael Forrest in London, the UK says, when I plug one Mac's HDMI output into another Mac with a USB adapter, the colors are wrong. I've tried different color profiles on the source Mac's display settings, but nothing looks right. Any ideas on how to fix this?
Good, Bill.
Purely a guess, but the first thing I would check on are all the HDMI connectors and the adapters Apple branded. And I say that because there's a lot of inexpensive knockoffs of these things, and I think Adam Savage did a look at the actual Thunderbird technology and their cables, and they put an incredible amount of engineering into the ends of the cable with little PCBs and circuits, and that's why sometimes those adapters are 6 to 10 times more expensive than the knockoff adapters out there. So that's one place I'd look at real quick. Make sure that you're using Apple branded stuff all the way down the line. If it's a problem there, then it's a real problem. But it could be as simple as the USB adapter somebody bought for $10, and that's messing up your whole signal pass-through.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, a lot of these UVC adapters have reproduced colors very differently from each other. And I think a year and a half or 2 years ago, Guy did the comparison between like a good number of UVC adapters, and there were interesting results from those in terms of how accurately they reproduce the signal. And of course, as you mentioned, no matter what, the signal coming out of a computer is going through some sort of ICC profile, and you may want to look at what the computer is doing to the actual signal on the way out. But what I would, the first thing I would look into is the accuracy of color reproduction of that specific UVC adapter.
Good, Guy.
Yeah, how violent is the color shift? Are we talking radically like RGB? Because one of these things, the Geffen HDMI detective, is what I had to throw on this computer down here recently. Same issue. So you could throw money at it and get one of those Geffens if it's totally off. Basically, you hook up a different monitor and let it handshake, lock the EDID. There's a little button, and then it's locked, and it won't shift when you plug it in and ditch the monitor.
Good, Courtney.
And I'm not sure because I don't have any new Macs, but check and make sure it's set to the input, the color scheme, like YUV versus RGB. There's two different type of color signals that are available on HDMI, so make sure your Mac is set to the same signal type, YUV versus RGB, that your converter is using.
Next question.
Chris Sabato in Albany, Oregon is up next. I'm comparing the X32 rack versus the Yamaha TF rack. The TF is cheaper. Which would you choose? And does having an existing X32 and X Air devices change your choice?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Unless you have any AS50 infrastructure and also UltraNet infrastructure that's locking you down, I would 100% go with the TF, especially if you're dealing with any analog audio inputs and outputs.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Hands down, the TF. Just the workflow is so much simpler, especially, I mean, granted, there's a lot of users out there for the X32 platform, but the workflow is just so much simpler on the TF, especially with the Dante routing and such.
Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Oklahoma City. What are your thoughts on the iPad version of Final Cut Pro going to a subscription-based model?
Bill, real quick.
Yeah, they didn't really go to it. The iPad version has always been subscription-based. I think the young people that they were going for appreciate that and don't have a problem with it. So I think that's why they did it. It makes more of a cash flow for the development team as they're doing a whole new product.
It's part of Apple's business model on the iOS devices. And so of course, they're going to, they can't not eat their own dog food related to that. So I think that's probably a big factor there. Gordon Capes is going to be coming up here from Studio Technology here in just a minute. Just want to let you know what else we're doing this week. Dado Valentic is going to be on tomorrow from Color Lab. Color Lab does a lot of the heavy lifting for color correction for you automatically. And so they're going to talk about, he's going to talk about what that takes to actually put that together. Tomorrow evening, we're having a special fireside chat with Andy Carluccio. I'll be doing that. These are much like the one we did with Colleen Henry, so we'll be doing that 6 p.m. tomorrow. It'll be the same place, different time, 6 p.m. Friday, of course, we're going to be talking about personal travel kits. What do we take on the road? So come for that for the morning. And then Saturday, of course, we have Q&A. We do that every Saturday. And Sunday is more of an introspection. So if you have questions about office hours itself, if you have questions about why we're doing what we're doing, that's the best time. We don't really answer those during the week, but we can answer them on Sundays. We don't broadcast that, so that's kind of more of an internal discussion. So join us on Sunday.